click for us as he reads off the names? Because I usually don't do that.
Well, I can't do it. Maybe Lori can do it because I have to take notes.
Okay, we're up to presentations now, and Ms. Weeden and Mr. Clinch, city engineers, talking about stormwater outfall project. Welcome.
Good morning. I have a frog in my throat. Good morning, Mayor and Council. Kathleen Weeden again, City Engineer. I'm here with James Clinch, the Stormwater Engineer, to talk about an update on Flamingo Ditch and Deertown Gulley. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to James as the project manager and the expert on this one.
Thanks, Kathleen. Glad to be here. We wanted to give you an update on some of the recent developments we've had with these two particular outfall projects, and specifically present the staff recommendation of moving forward with a reduced scope version of both of these projects. So just to refresh everyone's memories, this is the two largest outfall basins on the island of Venice. Flamingo Ditch to the north here, pretty much smack dab in the middle of Golden Beach, and then Deertown Gulley is further to the south, just off of Sunset Drive. These were the projects that were developed with two parts from the get-go. One part being the restoration of the water body itself, and the second part being an infrastructure technology portion, which was pipes and filtration equipment. So to give you a little history on what's brought us to this point is, these projects originally were modeled off of a Sarasota County project that's going to take place at Siesta Key Beach. Similar situation that we're in with a beach outfall and bacteria issues, and so we kind of modeled our project off of theirs. Same engineer, very similar scope. Recently, this project went to bid for Sarasota County, and the bids came in very, very high. We were obviously concerned about this and immediately requested that our initial estimate be updated based on these real-world figures. Took our engineer quite some time, but we did get it last month, and we were unfortunately found out that it was considerably higher than we originally budgeted, with the original 30% being 1.28 and the updated estimate being 3.65 million. So we had to regroup a little bit and think about what our options are here. The current budget that we have will only support that first part of these projects, which would be the restoration of the water bodies themselves. We presented this option. We had a preliminary meeting with SwiftMud staff. They're our funding partners in the project, and they did support this option. They said they would not support additional funding from the increase in cost. This increase in cost definitely puts the cost benefit of the whole project into question. I think if we knew from the get-go that this would have been the cost, we would have considered a reduced scope project to begin with. And then finally, that we still have some property issues with these projects. We've received permanent easements from some of the owners, but some other owners, despite our best efforts and over a year of working with them, are still not comfortable with the final project and with granting us the required easements. Kit.
The easement issue, just with Flamingo Ditch?
Would actually be for both. When we originally got into these projects, we imagined there's such major drainage ways that there would be a county easement. The county has historically maintained these. When we dove into and we actually researched the property information, these are privately owned drainage ways. There's some minor easements on the Flamingo. Deertown has nothing. It's two residential lots that go to the middle of the ditch. So in order to perform the project, we'd have to get easements from the neighbors. Deertown Gulley, both neighbors are not in favor of doing anything at that location. Flamingo Ditch, it's been split. Both neighbors want something done. They just have different ideas of what they want done.
I got a question.
Yes, sir, Mr. Nance.
If it's private, why do we want to use public funds to take care of private property? Why don't we make them take care of it?
Well, it affects all of us with regards to beach water quality, and it drains several hundred acres of the island of Venice. So I would argue that we have an interest in it, but certainly we could make the argument that they're responsible for the maintenance.
I bring that up because, I live in a subdivision, it's private, and although some people would like to pass the buck on the city, but we're responsible for our drainage and, storm sewers and roads and sidewalks and everything. And anything happens, and we have to take care of it.
We are responsible for the outfalls at Flamingo Ditch and Deertown Gulley in order to address what's coming out the outfalls. Given the size and the scope of the project, it was the most reasonable way to go forward and for the public interest to work on these large outfalls structures. We could go and do code enforcement and go forward to the property owners, but I don't think the resources would be available to resolve this larger issue that affects our roads, affects our citizens, and affects large drainage basins. So this was a good public-private partnership to go ahead and get these major outfalls, primarily due to the beach closings. There isn't anything in our code that says you can't have bacteria replicating in your canal. So I don't know that we could do a code enforcement against those particular property owners because there's muck in the canal that's replicating bacteria. It becomes a very difficult gray area. Since we've come up with, and I'll let James go ahead and finish, but since we've come up with a reduced scope that fits within our funding availability, we feel all the temporary easements will be granted, which is the only way we can do that work in that area is with the temporary easements, that this really is in the best interest of the city to move forward with this water quality improvement project.
Sorry,
Go ahead, Ms. Gates.
I'll let you get done with your thing, but I have a problem with really, I think the scaled down project is going to be great. I think it'll suffice in some ways and save a lot of money, but I have a problem with not knowing why the folks that weren't giving the easements or the right-of-ways, why they weren't on board with this. This is my real concern. And I haven't spoken to any of them. I don't know who they are, but I have a problem with that. Again, when I look at Venice Villas, those folks are all there for the beach. And I know you guys don't know the answer either, but I sure would like some feedback from the folks that weren't on board with this program and just to know why.
I think a major issue, and that, like I said, I've been working with them for over a year, and a large portion of them were on board with the project and excited about it for the reasons you just listed, but a portion of them was adamantly against it, and they had some internal political issues and ended up voting against it.
Internal within their own developments and
within their owners association.
Okay.
Yes. So.
And that troubles me. That really troubles me is that those folks weren't on board with this program. Not that we could do it anyway, but.
I totally agree. Yep.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, just let them, are you finished with Ms. Gates?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is the problem between granting an easement and granting access? Because there's a significant difference in actually giving property, or I shouldn't say a taking, but granting property that you're going to grant permanent rights to somebody to maintain. That's what an easement is. And granting access to get this job done. And is that the root of this problem?
The root certainly was with the permanent easements. And the reasoning is, at Flamingo Ditch specifically, we were proposing to install some pretty sophisticated equipment, a pumping station and UV filtration. We were not going to be able to spend these public funds without a ability to access and maintain these in the future. So we did request the ability to cross their property and access easement to be able to replace a pump, to clean, and to do those kind of things. And a portion of their group viewed that as a encumbrance to their property.
So,
You finished?
Yes, I am, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Carlissimo?
Mr. Mayor, Veniceville is our neighbor where we live. And if you ever live in a condominium complex, you'll understand that the rumor mill really gets working. And condominium complexes have a lot of absentee owners, and they do a lot by emails. So it's not uncommon for something, a little unrest, to just develop its own wave and affect things. But I can tell you that I've spoken to the president of the association, who that association, as you know, hired an attorney, a land use attorney out of that specialized in that sort of thing, out of Tampa. That attorney advised them that this was in their best interest, and the president of their association was in favor of it. But when we saw that, and with permission and working through the city manager, I was going to talk to the president of that association as a neighbor. And but that discussion became moot when we found out that we couldn't afford to do everything that we were going to do anyways. So the answer to your question is, condominium associations are sometimes difficult to deal with, but the management staff there, on advice of their attorney, was in favor of it.
That's a great point. And the people that I sat down with and worked with and explained the project to were for the project. It was the people who were trying to understand it over a phone call that had some issues. So,
Did I understand you correctly that the advice of their attorney was to go ahead and grant the easement? Okay.
So moving forward, our recommended alternative at this point is to go ahead and phase the project, with phase one being the restoration work within the water bodies themselves, removing the silt, exotic plant removal, and then phase two being the infrastructure phase, the pipes and the filters. This would allow us to complete phase one immediately for both Flamingo and Deertown Gulley. Originally, Deertown Gulley was scheduled for 2015, so we would be able to do something beneficial for both of them in the next fiscal year.
And if I could, when he spoke previously about the Deertown Gulley property owners not being in favor of the project, they were not in favor of large equipment being installed in what they felt was a pristine area. They are in favor of, at least they've indicated, they're in favor of going in and cleaning up and doing restoration work. They're very much in favor of that.
Right.
Go ahead, Mr. McKeon.
James, I don't know whether you have another chart here. Let me let you finish.
Okay. We'll get through
Ms.
it.
Cates, did you have something at this point?
that's what I was going to say. I assumed it was that they didn't want the pump house in their backyard, a little bit of NIMBY, and you can't blame them for that.
That's exactly right. And we actually had the late Walter Farley wrote his book, Overlooking the Creek, and we got some serious sentimental issues with that family. And so the restoration work, they have been positive about just doing some restoration work in there.
Okay.
So we would be able to accomplish these immediately. Phase two would then be shelved pending additional funding. These are FEMA grant eligible projects. Here's a great, beautiful picture of Flamingo Ditch. This is just to show it's almost totally clogged with silt and muck. They have frequent algae blooms that creates a nice dark environment for bacteria, very nutrient rich, which creates these algae blooms, and lots of invasive species. There's another photo from Flamingo Ditch. We would be not only removing the sediment and muck, but we would also install a sediment sump, which is just an over-excavated area that's easy to access so that this doesn't happen in the future. We can keep it cleaned out easily. And this is a photo from Deertown Gulley, where there's just numerous exotic plants, Brazilian peppers and Australian pines. We'd be removing those and replanting native vegetation. So the benefits of this option, Swiftmud staff has given this support as a funding partner, would allow for the county project to get completed. And I think that's huge. These are very sophisticated projects. There's nothing like it in our region. I don't think we want to be the first one to build one. If we let the county complete their project, we'll have real construction costs, real maintenance costs, and performance data. Does it even work the way it was advertised? The access issues and the ownership issues kind of go away for this first phase. We'll be able to access it through a vacant lot on Flamingo Drive. I've already gotten permission from the owners, and Venice Villas has given us verbal approval that they'll give us a temporary easement to do the work. And most importantly, this would all be able to get accomplished under our existing budget. Something else to keep in mind, our Outfall 1 and 2 project is still moving forward. This project is 99% on public property and will address the area where we had the highest bacteria readings. It was recently ranked high for Swiftmud cooperative funding. So our next step are to finalize these temporary easements. We'd have some minor plan revisions to do, and then I had received approval from Swiftmud board. We just got an email yesterday that because this falls under the original scope, we won't even have to do that. So that's no longer needed. So we're asking for some direction from you to proceed with this option, and you can scratch that the Swiftmud board.
One thing to keep in mind is that, the win-win situation of the project is, like James said, we can watch how the Siesta Key project performs. Plus, we had our resources allocated to do one outfall. That funding that we had allocated to do one outfall will be very close to what we need to do all three of our local share costs. So we'll be able to accomplish all three, meanwhile saving about $1 million of enterprise fund money to be used on other projects. So, this is a great opportunity to do this as a stage development. We would have loved to have done a larger innovative design, but I do believe that we're going to get the water quality improvements that we're looking for. No one can guarantee what the beach water quality is in the future. Sometimes when we've had negative beach water quality, it's been when it hasn't even been a rain event. So, it isn't a guarantee, but in South Venice, they've been doing similar projects where they've been cleaning out the canals, and what they're finding is once you get the muck out, once you get the banks restored, the invasives gone, the canals start running clear. You start seeing fish, you start seeing native habitat reestablishing, natural filtration, and the bacteria issues decrease or go away. Also, we will still be looking at that structure at Flamingo Ditch. We're working with Coastal Tech as the beach contractor to look at what our options are, whether we could remove that structure, modify that structure, so that we have a more regular discharge from that canal system versus the way it's functioning now, and also to reduce the erosion. So that will still be moving forward.
Thank you. Mr. McKeon?
Yeah, James, how far, on the restoration of the creek, the removal of the muck and like, how far back does it go from the beach?
We were proposing to go to Gardenia Drive, which is
To Gardenia, okay.
Yep, the first
So it
north-south
doesn't even
road
go all
there.
the way to Harbor?
No.
Okay, Gardenia. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Gates?
The goal is to get the water moving, though, right? And will you eventually have to do more?
Well,
Or do you, you don't have a magic ball that you can't rub right now.
I mean,
know that,
ideally, having a pumping system or a way to keep that outfall open is a major benefit that we won't be getting, which is something we'd be looking at in the future by either removing the wooden outfall or doing perhaps a smaller pumping system or reduced scope. Or if we qualify for FEMA funding, they'll generally pay for 75%, I think. So we may have some funding in the future.
But regardless of if you do get that FEMA funding, you still won't get the support of some of the people that you need.
We could operate from where the location, we're going to clean out up to the structure as part of this project, and the structure is within the ECL. We do have access through our beach easements to access our structure. So what may end up happening is if we can get permission to remove the structure and see how it functions as a natural system for a period of time. Deertown Gulley opens more regularly. We don't see this kind of muck and
Right.
there's some restoration required there, but it's much less a smaller degree. You go there and there's still wading birds and there's it's still a functioning ecosystem. It just needs some
I'm
some
kind of
work.
afraid of what you're going to find in Flamingo.
It's been
An
ignored
old
for a long
Yeah, I
Buick
think
in
he's
there or
going to be
something.
supervising all that muck removal. I think I might be.
Jimmy Hoffa.
Jimmy Hoffa's right. Could be. Mr. Carlosimo?
Does this mean staff, you two won't have to go out and shovel out the silt that blocks that, number one? And the second question is this. Currently, there's some flooding. When we have heavy rainfall, there's some flooding that occurs on the intersections of Gardenia and Villas. And that's been going on for quite a while. Is the cleaning out of the Flamingo ditch, will that have any effect on that flooding condition on that road?
Yes and no. Yes, it will, from a sense of the silt is so high in some areas that it blocks flow, and the vegetation is so overgrown that it blocks flow. So when you remove that, you will see some benefits. However, the structure that's there today will still clog with sand, especially during tropical events. So we'll still be dealing with some issues with that clogging with sand in the future.
And that is being researched right now. We're working with Cliff from Coastal Tech to come up with a recommended alternative solution as to how we can address that. That structure just does not function.
Thank you.
It functions really well if we're down inside it shoveling it out, but that's just not a lot of fun.
Mr. McKeon?
Just a final question. I think this South Venice is Alligator Creek. And how does this compare to that in the sense of, the amount of distance that they came and briefed us on, their approach, which you said has been pretty successful. I'm just trying to get a sense of scale.
Well, they did some small, and I don't have a sense of scale because I haven't seen the overall project, but I have seen some of the smaller canals. This has worked very well. Plus, they've also done it on larger canals. So they're finding consistent effort, but I'm not familiar enough unless you have more information.
No, and let's not, this is definitely still going to be a large project. So this is, some of those pictures that I've seen from South Venice, they're doing it by hand. This will not be one of those projects. This will still be almost a dredging kind of an operation to get the silt out of there. It'll still be a large scale project.
Any further questions? Do we have anyone sign up to speak?
Yes. Tom Heinold.
Thank you, city engineers.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Tom Heinold, resident of Venice, actually of
Welcome.
Island Shores, which is adjacent to Flamingo Ditch. We have been in favor of the project from the beginning. As the engineers just mentioned to you, it is a health issue. It's definitely a health issue. In reality, it's an economic issue. When your beach is closed, when the publicity gets out, the vacationers don't come, the property values go down, it becomes an economic issue for a lot of people in the city. It's known that it is polluted, and it is pushing pollution out there. So I'm just here as a citizen to urge you as council to approve this new phase project. In essence, the pollution is the sediment. That is the biggest thing. It is a two-sided project, as Ms. Gates was talking about. We still have the outflow issue, and personally, I think it used to be a lot better before the outflow was ever built, so maybe taking it out is the right answer, but that's for your engineers to decide in the future. But as a citizen, again, I just want to strongly urge you to pass this because it is a nuisance to the public, and it is a health issue. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you for coming forward.
Yep.
Anyone else?
John Ryan. That's it.
Mr. Ryan, welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and council members. Thank you. Be very brief. Just wanted to let you know, first off, commend your staff on the efforts. We've gone through one presentation where James was present, and certainly as the Chamber of Commerce, we're very supportive of anything that would help and clean up our beaches. We are the first probably to hear about the incidences. We're on the Department of Health hotline for when beach closings occur. And it's very quickly afterwards that people start contacting us, wondering about the safety and the quality of the waters of our shores. So to have some sort of mediation factor put into play is going to be a big help. It is unfortunate, but perhaps fortunate that the original project is not an option at this time. Sometimes spend a little and see what happens is a good opportunity, especially with the fact that this is a phased project, that the first phase would have happened anyway. We also went through some presentations to the folks in South Venice. It is encouraging to see what they're doing as neighbors and neighborhoods to make their lives better. So perhaps there's something that can be done in Venice to assist the city in this process. And then hopefully, you know, we will see improvements to the water quality. As a young man, I used to get tropical fish out of those ditches, and it was, you know, it was certainly, I would not call it pristine, but it was certainly a cleaner environment, and look forward to the improvements. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. And that's it? Okay, I guess we're looking then for consensus for the engineering department to proceed with Flamingo Ditch and Deertown Gulley.
Yes.
We don't need a motion, but if there's anyone that wants to speak against that, I would say we have unanimous consensus for you to proceed. Thank you. And I think we can go ahead and get Mr. Snyder up since he's here. And you have a Finance Department update.
Thank you, Mayor.